Steve Burgess, our guest, he's a writer, he's a humorist, he's a broadcaster, watched you many times on the CBC.
Yes,
I
indeed.
loved At the End in News World. I wish they'd bring that back.
I do too, or at least I wish they would keep mailing me the checks at the very least.
Yeah, exactly.
Just mail me some checks, and I don't even need to do the show anymore.
You'd be so happy.
Yeah.
Why did you write this, Who Killed Mom?
Why did I write the book? I was told to write it. I mean, the thing is, I've always wanted to write a book, and I'd had, a proposal for another book that I couldn't sell, and any freelance writer wants to write a book, and it's an ambition. But I wrote a few stories for Swerve magazine in Calgary. Shelley Youngblood is the editor of Swerve, and the first two stories were about how Christmas was changing as my parents got older. The third story was actually about my mom's final days, and Shelley, the editor of Swerve, said to Swerve readers, this is a Calgary-based magazine,
Great.
She said, if you email us, we'll send you PDF files of these three stories. And hundreds of people wrote in. And it was an overwhelming response. And so Shelley had to tell me, I was so dense, Shelley had to tell me, this is a book for you.
Yes.
I went, oh, okay. And I felt sheepish because I'd been looking for a book to write, but she had to tell me that this was the book.
That's so great, because someone said, I can't remember who, writing is the mention of myself to myself. And in this case, to remember all of those things that happened to you is one thing, and then to get the siblings to tell you, and your father's still around, so he remembers a little bit, but to cobble it all together. Did you keep a journal ever?
No, I never did, which is interesting. I very often wished I would have kept a journal or a diary, but I didn't. But I've pretty good recall for a lot of the stories, and so many of these family stories I'd heard, for many years. And my sister Lynn was a great resource because she's a journalist, she's a CBC producer, and so when I asked her for stories, she knew what I wanted. She knew that I wanted specifics that were narrative stories from our parents' lives. Whereas my other siblings, they tried to help, but they were more like, oh, this is why I loved mom, or this is why I love dad, or whatever. And it's like, that's great, but that's not what I need. That's not what I need.
Give me a story.
Yeah, that's right.
Where do the tacky candles fit in?
The tacky
tacky candles.
That's just a little sort of an afterthought. That's a funny little story where we had, as I say in the book, we were fundamentalists, not Christian fundamentalists, but Christmas fundamentalists, in the sense that everything had to be exactly the same every Christmas. You always had to have everything in its place. And there were these 4 candles, Santa Claus candles spelling out Noel. There was 4, N-O-E-L.
We can all remember those of a certain age.
Loved those. And for some inexplicable, god-awful reason, my mom threw the candles out.
No.
And Lynn happened to come home for Christmas that year along with me, and we were stunned. What? They don't, wax doesn't go bad. Why would you throw those candles out? And so we were so angry that we went out to the mall and bought every cheesy Santa Claus candle we could lay our hands on, and we all wrapped them up individually and stuck them under the tree. So there were like little landmines that went off all night, where all Christmas Eve, Mom was, oh, look, it's another Santa candle.
Well, see, we never lit ours.
No, of course not.
They were like in the greens, but you never lit them.
That's just it. These things had never been lit and they'd never been used. Why throw them out?
It was a
travesty.
That Joan.
Yes.
Big error. Who knew? But the grandmother.
Oh, boy. Yeah.
Hello.
What a piece of work.
Your grandmother.
Yes, she was a piece of work. I don't mind saying so.
And she's gone, so we can talk about her.
Woo, thank goodness.
But you did say something in the book that she had the grace of a tuba and the sensitivity of a stuffed sturgeon. Why? Tell me about Grandma. Now, this is your mother's mother.
That's right.
Your mother's mother, yes.
My mother's mother. She was just one of those utterly self-centered, manipulative people who make other people's lives hell. She was, I use the phrase in the book, and I've used it a lot, but I say she had a mind like a windowless room. She was someone who, it was all about controlling other people, manipulating, and she was just a bad person. And so the central story of the book for me is the fact that how my mother turned that around. There's a lot of memoirs I think about, I had a bad childhood, but this memoir is about I had great parents and my mother had bad parents. How did she do that? The central idea of the book to me is like, why are some people destroyed by flames while others are tempered?
Yes.
Why are some made stronger while others are destroyed?
And your mom obviously said, I will never be like her.
Exactly. that was my mom's guiding star, was I will not be like my own mother. And that was a great philosophy for her.
You were very wise in, or perhaps the siblings too, in noticing that your mother was a bit frustrated raising all those children, including you, but that being sidelined when you're so bright and so ready to do something with your life is difficult for any female.
Yes, now I have trouble now identifying when I knew that. As an adult, I absolutely knew that my mother had been very frustrated and needing to break out. But I'm not sure how aware I was of that when I was a kid, because she wasn't trying to make us aware that she was frustrated and angry. She wasn't.
But did she go to a psychiatrist?
She did go to a psychiatrist, yeah, in the 60s when there was quite a bit of stigma attached.
A lot of stigma.
Yeah, and he was a bad psychiatrist. I knew his family. I knew him. He was a really terrible
Is this
psychiatrist.
Dr. Molecule?
No, that's our family doctor.
Oh, the family doctor.
We've had a lot of bad doctors. This psychiatrist is identified in the book as Dr. V.
Oh, right.
And a friend of mine, a good friend of mine, is Dr. V's son. And I was having coffee with him a while back, and he was saying, no, you're right. You're right about our family life. I paint a little picture of Dr. V's family life as being like a little insane asylum. And my friend who was part of it said, yeah, you're not far wrong.
I'm sure not. Well, as you know, in any home, when the phone rings after midnight, you know your kids are in trouble.
They're in trouble.
Or you think they are.
Yes.
And sometimes you
and ours was on speed dial, I think, down in the cop station. Our number was probably on speed dial.
Tell me about the incident when you almost, one of the near deaths, when you got the rebar through your chin or something. What were you up to?
This is an advantage over a book, because I can actually show you where it hit. There's actually a little white scar down here and a little lump of skin where it got pushed. The rebar hit right here, split my lip open, and went right inside my cheek, bang, up there, and impaled me. And then my cheek puffed up like a beach ball because of the infection. So I couldn't even open my teeth were shut like that because my cheek was so tight. But it happened because my brother called me clumsy. It was my brother's fault.
Of course
He called me clumsy, and I had to prove him wrong by going and playing on a construction site. And I was walking along the top of a wall on this construction site, and I came to a board, and I was going to lean out over space and step on this other bar, but the board wasn't nailed down, and the board went over, and then I went over, and rebar in the face.
Well, you're lucky you lived in the Swanee neighborhood where there were a few doctors, even though you didn't live in the best house because you were in the preacher's house.
We had doctors on either side of us, and one of them intercepted me halfway across the street, bleeding like a stuck pig.
So that's not looking so good, son.
Yeah, not so good, yeah.
No. Now, you had your drinking days.
I did.
And one day decided to give up the Kelowna Double Jack or whatever you were
That was the first thing I ever drank.
Was it?
Kelowna Double Jack, cost $1.05.
$1.05.
It was $1.05.
First thing I ever drank, what was it called? Chauvenet Red Cap.
Oh.
It was really bad wine. Ew.
We used to drink something called Red Devil, too. I don't know.
Did you?
Yeah, Red Devil.
Ever T-Bird wine?
We
that
never
was
had
95 cents.
Yeah, you remember Lonesome Charlie?
Oh, Lonesome Charlie. I remember we used to say you can't get well without muscatel. That was equally as
We
bad.
used to drink Mateus as well. We thought
Oh, yeah,
ourselves
can't get loose without Mateus.
Yes, we were refined and sophisticated when we were drinking Mateus. Yeah.
Of course we were. Oh, Brandon will never forget you. So back to why. Why did you amputate that limb, the
drinking?
The drinking.
Well, it was just, it was a great little realization that not a lot of people come to, and I was lucky enough to come to, and that is that one day I was sitting drinking, in my basement, and by this time working as a DJ in Edmonton, Alberta, and sitting drinking tequila and not feeling so good, and just saying, you should quit. Are you ready to quit? And the answer was no, I'm not ready to quit. I'm really not. But then the key realization was the next one, which is, you know what? You're never going to be ready to quit, which means that this day is as good as any other day. This is a bad day to quit, so is tomorrow, and so is the next day. So pick any bad day, and today is going to be your bad day. Pick this day. It's as good as any other.
But it sounds like it was controlling your life. You weren't controlling it.
Oh, no. I had a serious drinking problem. There's no doubt about it.
Okay.
There's ugly stories that, I don't want to ruin people's breakfasts, but...
No. And we want them to read the book, Who Killed Mom.
Exactly, yeah.
We can't tell all the stories.
Can't tell them all, but
no,
it was ugly. I had a serious drinking
Aside from
problem.
the fact you stole a plastic Santa.
I stole a plastic Santa.
You admitted that.
I did, in July. I was doing them a favor. I was clearing up shelf space at the Metropolitan store in Brandon.
Of course you were. Now, take me to the last days with your mom.
Yes.
With Joan.
Yes.
That experience for you as a son, and Someone
I'll
who
tell you
loved
about.
her.
I mean, I won't so much tell you about the final days in the hospital when she was in a coma, but the last meaningful days I had with her, which were the last Christmas we spent together, and that was just such a bonus, such a blessing, because I didn't know what to expect. Her Parkinson's had taken such a toll on her. She was such a captive in her body, and she was being fed into her abdomen through a tube. But we had a great little Christmas. She kind of marshaled her resources for the big moments, a couple of dinners. We went out and we arranged, she couldn't really eat anymore, but she could spoon some soup.
Yeah.
So we went out, and instead of going out to a restaurant like we used to do, we set it up in the apartment, and I got her some soup, and she dressed in her finery, and we had, because what would happen was we'd have Christmas, but then their anniversary is 3 days later, the 28th. So we would have two big dinners, Christmas dinner and anniversary dinner. And we managed both those things, and we really had a lovely time. And then right after I left, a really moving thing happened on New Year's Eve at River Heights Terrace, where they stay. She got up and danced with my dad.
How great.
Yeah.
Yeah, like one last
Yeah.
hurrah, Pa.
Yeah, and then she was dead a few months after that. So.
Well, as you know, getting old is often a reversal of circumstance because we take care of them,
Yes.
them who took care of us, which is so lovely. And I know my mother's last days when she was in the home, she met these amazing people.
Right.
She fell in love.
Did she?
Yeah.
With another
Well, he
gentleman?
was 95, but had all his beans and, they'd listen to music and do whatever.
That's lovely.
She never kissed him
Oh, yeah.
because she was not going there,
Right, yeah.
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 And I said, well, Mom, you might just, she goes, no, dear, no, not at all. But great characters in the home. You had one in your mother's home, Queen Julia.
Queen Julia. Well, Queen Julia is still around. Queen Julia still has dinner with my dad every night.
No,
Yeah.
she the gossip queen?
She is, and the funny thing is, I really thought she'd be insulted by the book. And I felt bad about some of the things I wrote about her, but she bought 2 copies. And when the Globe and Mail interview that they did with me, I talked about Queen Julia, and I regretted that too, because I insulted her again. She wanted 8 copies of that interview. I don't understand this woman. She just, she's having her 15 minutes, I guess, and she loves it.
She wants to be on top of it.
Yes, but honestly.
I mean, she knows stuff that's going on before the home knows things are going on.
I insulted her, though. I said that she had enough facial hair to get a Carnival Midway job.
That's insulting.
That is insulting. and she wants 2 copies of the book.
And she still loves you.
Yeah.
After all these years. What would you like people to take home from this? From Who Killed Mom?
The most basic thing is that I want them to know who Joan Burgess was. But obviously, there's no point in a book like this if it doesn't have universal application, if it doesn't speak to a lot of people. And what I'm finding, everybody who talks to me about the book says, your grandmother was my mother, or your grandmother was my mother, or my mother was like your mother, and then her final days were like yours. Everybody has a similar story, and I'm amazed that the stories are, I mean, I knew that this would be the kind of story a lot of people would be going through, but I'm surprised how many people say things like, oh, somebody in my family was like your grandmother, and things like that,
Well, and also, so many of us think if we're not like movie stars or jetting around the world, President of the United States or Prime Minister, that our lives haven't been very interesting.
Right.
But they are.
And this was when I was trying to sell the book, that was my concern. I thought, I mean, look at the bestseller list, it's Shania Twain. My mom was not Shania Twain. I thought, who's going to care? But people do care. People do care about the universal themes, and it's been very gratifying to hear from people.
The dance of life.
Yes.
And how important Christmas is if that's your celebration.
Whether you're religious or not, as a
Exactly.
family thing, it's just very important
Ritual.
to me. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Fanny.
Steve Burgess, Who Killed Mom? A Delinquent Son's Meditation on Family, Mortality, and Very Tacky Candles.